in my time at home, and God took me back to a season in my life a few years ago. And this is a story I've told publicly before, but I want to share it again because I think it's relevant to what we're facing in these days. It happened when I was waiting for the results of a test to find out whether or not I would have to fight cancer. And in that time, there was a waiting period where there was just this sense of impending doom. I was waiting and felt powerless and was just kind of finding out whether or not. And I feel like there's probably a collective sense of the same thing. We're all waiting. There's this sense of an undercurrent of impending doom. And it was in that season that I was reading Psalm 23, and the particular line that stood out to me was, he prepares a table in the presence of my enemies. And at the time I thought, why are the enemies there? It doesn't really make sense that this thought that the banquet that God was preparing for us still had the enemies surrounding it. And as I went to sleep that night, I had probably the only God dream I've ever had, and I still remember it so vividly. I was in my dream in a restaurant sitting around a table, and I was surrounded by companions. I had faith and hope and joy and love and peace and strength and wisdom were my companions and friends at the table, and we were talking together and interacting, and my attention was focused on them, and we were singing and we were enjoying each other's company. And but as the night wore on, I became more and more aware in the dream of three figures standing at the bar, and they seemed to be shrouded in darkness. And I said out loud, well, who are they and what are they doing here? And I felt the Spirit of God answer me. And he said, they are fear, doubt, and unbelief. And I said to God, well, what are they doing here? They don't belong here. And he said, well, this restaurant, like your life, is open to the public, and enemies will come and go in this public space. But notice, who sits at your table is by invitation only. And I became really aware in that moment that what goes on in my mind and in my heart, I get to choose. I get to choose who I spend time with. And the dream carried on, and in the dream I continued to be a little bit fascinated by those three figures. And every time I glanced over and every time I gave attention over to my left, this figure would take another step forward, until there was a moment in my dream where fear was standing directly behind the seat of faith. And I felt the Spirit of God speak to me again and say, notice there's no spare seats at this table, and faith will not share her seat with fear. Who are you going to ask to sit down? And I woke up out of the dream and I asked myself that question. Who am I going to spend my internal narrative with? Who am I going to engage with? Who am I going to spend my attention on? Is it going to be faith? Is it going to be joy? Is it going to be grace and strength and wisdom? Or am I going to keep glancing to fear and allowing him to draw close and have a presence around my table? And it reminded me of the scripture in Philippians that I'm going to read to you, and I hope it encourages you today like it has me again as I read it this morning. It's in Philippians 4 verse 8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Think about those things. Invite those things to your table. And today, whatever you're facing, that's it.